Anin Bojo, I'm Sherry Lawson, host of Indigenous Voices, We're Still Here. Today, my special guest is Terri-Dawn Craig, and she's going to talk to us about her life and her job and some of her projects working in the justice system mostly. But who knows where we're going to go in the next 27 minutes. Welcome, Terri-Dawn.
Nadine.
I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah.
Can you please introduce yourself to our viewers in whichever way you think is proper?
Thank you. My name is Terri-Dawn Craig, and I'm a member of the Chippewas of Rama First Nations, and I'm a volunteer in my community.
So tell us about some of those volunteer things you've been part of.
Well, I've been lucky to sit on actually a couple community groups in Rama. For the past few years, I've committed time to the Rama Housing Committee and to the Financial Loans Committee. And recently, I've just joined the Rama First Nations Lands Committee, which is very exciting work.
Good. Okay, tell us about working in the court system and the kinds of things that you have done there as well, too. And you don't look old enough to have done all this, Terri-Dawn.
Well, I think I was about 5 when I started working.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
I have 32 years experience working in the Ontario Public Service. For the first 27 years of my career, I was employed by the Ministry of Attorney General Court Services Division. And during that time, I had held many actually responsible positions, which included supervisor of court operation. I was a Provincial Offences Act trainer and clerk of the court. I spent many years in the courtroom and in the court office working in criminal and civil and family law. And for the past 5 years, I've been working with the Ontario Provincial Police in the Criminal Investigations Branch.
All right. And I think back in the day, there was at least a couple times you were my court clerk when I was in provincial court. Am I right?
That's correct, Your Worship. And those were fun times.
Yeah, they were. I'm glad I'm not working there now, though. Things are a little more stressful.
I remember we used to perform marriages on Front Street way back in the early 90s, upstairs in the back where the small claims court used to go.
Yeah, on Fridays at 1 o'clock. 15 minutes in and out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually still have a couple who on their anniversary, July the 3rd every year, send me an anniversary card to say we're still together. Every year I get it from them. Okay, I want to take us back to 2015 when the Truth and Reconciliation Commission produced its large report on all the things basically that were wrong in Canada between the government and First Nations people. Did your project that you did, was it a result in part of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, or was it before that?
It was actually before that, and it's unfortunate that it wasn't part of the TRC because I know that having that recommendation about having eagle feathers in the court would have been just phenomenal for our people.
Okay, so take us to that project that you had a big part in, known generally as the Eagle Feather Initiative.
Right. So it was back in early 2013. I was in my role as supervisor of court operation in the Aurelian Barrie courts, and I was introduced to an Aboriginal court worker by the name of Shirley Hay. And Shirley Hay is Mohawk, and she's from Wataw First Nation. I don't know, Sherry, if you know Shirley.
Yes, actually, her brother was engaged to my sister Charlotte's stepdaughter. So there you go. I know her. That's the short story. The short story. Okay, go ahead.
So me and Shirley got talking, of course, about our backgrounds and our passion for our culture and our family. And Shirley mentioned to me that she wanted to bring an eagle feather into the court. And I said, I can help you with this. I had to be a part of it. And from that day forward, our Eagle Feather Initiative was born. We worked long hours, we worked weekends, we wrote protocols and procedures on how we could bring the feather into the court. We collaborated with the judiciary, the legal profession, the police on how it was going to happen. We had to get approvals from the senior court justice of Ontario to use the courtroom and move forward with the ceremony. So there was a lot of work that was put in to get this moving, and a lot of work to actually organize ceremonies. It usually took about 1.5 years to organize a ceremony. So yes, it was a lot of work. And in 2014, we gifted our first feather to the Barrie Courthouse, and Justice Krylov was our recipient. And since then, we've went on and had more ceremonies, and we've gifted the Bracebridge, Parry Sound, Midland, and Orillia Courthouse with eagle feathers for Indigenous people to swear on, as opposed to the Bible. And
okay, so for some of our viewers who wouldn't know why that would happen, you go into court and you have to step into the witness box and they hand you the Bible. What are you really talking about here?
So, Sherry, our initiative now allows eagle feathers into the courtroom. So if you're an Indigenous person and you feel more comfortable holding an eagle feather as opposed to a Bible, you now have that right in court to do that. And as First Nation people, the eagle is the messenger to our Creator. And when we wear or hold the eagle feather, it causes our Creator to take immediate notice. And the eagle feather is the highest honor to the Creator. And it's symbolic because it's important. It's important of its honesty and truthful principles. So when you hold the feather, it really is truly amazing. You know, if you're in a courtroom and you see an Indigenous person take the stand, and for them to have the option to hold something that is so sacred to them, is just a big step for our people.
So that must have been a big deal, getting that very in a box system to accept this, because they're all about the protocols, who reports to who, what titles there are, who sits where on the left or on the right, and who sits in front of you and how they get to see you, all of those kinds of things. Tell us about some of that background work that needed to be done.
Well, you know, we had to really sit down and we had to get a lot of advice from our elders in our community when we built these protocols and procedures, because we had to ensure that we stayed in line with our culture and our beliefs, you know, and we really had to push that forward in the courts and have that acceptance to know that we could run things the way that we wanted to. And the courts were so helpful and supportive, and they recognized that as First Nations people, and they allowed us to move forward and have the eagle feather in the courts for Indigenous people. So it was a lot of work. It was a lot of approvals. You know, there were some setbacks, but we kept pushing. We knew that eventually we could make it happen. It took us some time, but in the end, it was successful.
So a lot of our viewers will know that eagle feathers and Aboriginal people go hand in hand. And I've had people ask me, well, how many eagle feathers do you have? How many have you been given? How many have you gotten in the bush? And people don't understand. They just don't fall from the sky and we pick them up and start using them. Well, I guess they do fall from the sky, but you know what I mean? So tell us a little about that, and that it certainly is the truth that not every person has an eagle feather.
Yes, that's right. So we actually ensure that we've got eagle feathers available in the courts for people that don't have eagle feathers. However, if you own an eagle feather and you want to bring your eagle feather into the court, that's accepted as well. So the whole part of the initiative is to ensure that we've got feathers available in all the courts, because people don't have feathers, like you say. It's an honor to own an eagle feather. You know, and by us ensuring that we can have those feathers available for people, not just in Simcoe, Muskoka, but throughout the courts in Ontario itself, because like you say, people just don't have eagle feathers.
Right. And I remember my grandson asked me one time, where did I get my eagle feather? And I was just about to explain it was given to me by a group from the community. And he said, they don't have them at Walmart. He said, so there's his 9-year-old mind thing. Oh, you can buy anything there, socks, Jello, eagle feathers. I remember that so well. And I thought, oh, I've totally failed him if he didn't know that. Now, I did a little bit of reading on eagle feathers in courthouses across the country. And I found that in Alberta, there was a graduating class at one of the alternative Native schools out there, kids who got in a lot of trouble in high school. So they put them in this special Aboriginal school where they did a lot of culture, but still did reading, writing, arithmetic. And they had to work so hard to get through high school. They wanted to give an eagle feather to the 8 graduates that year and have a whole ceremony for them to try and keep them on the right path and keep them out of trouble. And the Alberta Fish and Wildlife Committee, branch of the government in Alberta said, you can't just carry around eagle feathers and hand them out to these people. Like, that's against the provincial rules, that in Ontario, only First Nations people are allowed to possess eagle feathers because they're a protected species, the eagle is. And I was quite appalled that an entire province got put on hold for part of this. So, of course, the chiefs went in and, pushed people back, and it eventually worked out fine. But there are just so many crazy stories about eagle feathers and Native people. So let me ask you then, you've mentioned a couple of times the ceremony that took place when you went into the courthouses. Everybody's on side. You've got the eagle feather ready for the courthouse. Now you're going to go in and have the ceremony. What does that look like?
So actually, the last ceremony that we did at the Aurelia Courthouse, we make sure that we are inviting. It's so important when you do the attendees list to make sure that you're inviting the people that really need to know that the feathers are in the court, like the police, like the lawyers, like the community agencies, like Elizabeth Fry and probation and parole, and our Aboriginal court workers. So a lot of the attendees is set up from those types of roles. And then we actually have a traditional ceremony. We had the big drum at our last ceremony. So we have song, we have dance, we have prayer, and then we actually do the smudging of the feather in the courtroom before it's presented to the court. And we usually select a judiciary to be the recipient of the feather for that courthouse. And most times it's usually the judge of that courthouse who we select because it's going into their court. And once the celebration is over, this year actually, or the last ceremony we did, we actually danced in the courtroom afterwards. And then we have a wonderful festive feast. And then we all sit around and enjoy each other's company and talk about the feather being now in the courts of celebration. And it just truly is, it's just unbelievable to watch. And I was lucky enough that APTN was in Rama the last time that we actually had our last ceremony. And they attended the courthouse and actually did some live footage of the ceremony. So for anybody that is interested, they can take a look at APTN. It was season 2, and the episode is called Identity. It's just, if you're looking for more information on the ceremony itself, it's there. We've also got a lot of social media on the event. We make sure that we involve the newspaper and the local news channels, and they've attended in stories and did stories on us as well to really get the word out that there's eagle feathers that exist for Indigenous people. Because we can't just hang a sign in the courthouse to say there's eagle feathers, please come and get them. They wouldn't allow us to do that. So we have to look at other ways to try and get the word out there that there's feathers available in the courts for our people.
I know that when an eagle feather is given to someone in the community, sometimes that happens at the same time that other things are going on, First Nations Day or one of the powwows. So someone might be chosen by the community to be given an eagle feather, which is the highest honor, as you've mentioned. And there's a lot of ceremony that goes with it as well. But for the most part, most Aboriginal people you'll meet in your lifetime don't carry an eagle feather, don't own one. So people need to be aware of that. So since there's so much ceremony that goes with the giving of it and the receiving of it, what happens after you left and the party was over and everybody goes back to court? What happens to that feather and who is in charge of it?
Yes. So we actually wrote a protocol for the care and the use of the feather in the courts. So the feather itself is in a feather box. So I just wanted to actually show you my feather box. I'm so proud of it. I have to show it. And Chi Megwitch to Bob Williams of Rama for making this beautiful box for me. And it's got no glue, no nails. It's made of cedar and deerskin. That's it. It's a beautiful box, and I keep one of my eagle feathers in it. And I'm just going to share it today. I'll pull it out of the box because I haven't touched it in a while. So me and Shirley actually have attended the courts and trained court managers. We've presented before the judiciary on the care and the use of the feather. So court staff are trained on how to care with the feather. They need to understand that they have to have, it needs to be handled with care at all times. So for example, we explained to the court staff, the eagle feather has a spirit and it needs to be respected. So don't place any papers or books or put any weight on the feather or the feather case. We also have a log that we keep, so we know how often the feather is being used in court. And based on how often it's being used, then we know how often we need to cleanse the feather. We try to do it once a month, but we might do it more than that if it's being used more. This is all done by the Aboriginal court worker. They're the people that are assigned to look after the feather. And that's one thing you really need to recognize when you're gifting feathers. You need to make sure that there is somebody that's going to care for that feather. If we can't find someone to care for a feather, then we won't gift the feather. There needs to be somebody that's going to take carriage and look after it. The feathers are usually kept in a secure location, like the judge's chambers or in a locked cabinet. And we actually wrote a protocol on how the clerk takes the feather and gives it to the witness, and what the oath is when you're giving the feather to the Indigenous people, what hand they need to hold it in. They should actually hold the feather throughout their whole testimony. So that's stuff that we needed to talk to the judiciary about. They didn't really have much knowledge of the feather and how it was going to be used. So that was something that we, made sure that we explained to them. The whole purpose is to hold the feather throughout your whole testimony. Once your testimony is then done, the clerk would take the feather from the witness and put it back in the feather box and maybe leave the box open. It's okay for the box to be open during the rest of the court proceeding until it's finished. And then again, at that time, once it's not needed anymore, it's put back in the box and put back in the secure location until it's needed again. So that's kind of how it works in the courtroom.
Thank you. And they're so beautiful. Most people will never see one. If by chance they see an eagle, there's so many feathers on it, doesn't look anything like that. Does yours have a deer hide on it, or was it beaded?
It was beaded.
On the end?
Yes. And it's just beautiful with all the
is that
4 direction colors of the black, the white, and the yellow.
Did somebody from this community do that?
We actually had some people from Georgian Bay area over, Georgian Island, do some beading for us. And when we actually gift feathers, like when we had done the last one to the Aurelia and Midland courthouses, we really involved the community and want them to be a part of it. Like you say, have them help with the cleansing of the feather, the beading of the feather, get everybody involved so that they know that the feather is there and it exists and it's there to be used.
Right. And I was taught that the eagle feather is a living, breathing entity. And that's why when you've got it in the courtroom, it's okay to leave the box open because it's alive. It's watching what's going on. It's sending messages directly to the creator. And I was told when I was given my first eagle feather as well, that when there are feasts, when there are community events happening, you should take your eagle feather with you and stand with it by the sacred fire so it'll take some of that power. Don't leave it locked away because it needs to be out, needs to be living, and needs to see what goes on. Am I right?
That's so correct. And that's so for protocol too. Once a year, we ask our Aboriginal court workers attend a feasting ceremony at least once a year to revitalize the feather and keep it sacred.
I was talking to somebody at another First Nations group in the community, and they said that with COVID, it's been so hard to get the feathers together. You're supposed to gather them together and feast them together so that they can visit with each other as well. So we've had to go the extra mile to make sure that it's feasted and thanked properly. So the Aboriginal court worker that you talked about, would they have as part of their job description, look after the eagle feather at the courthouse? What if that person leaves their job?
Well, if the court worker position becomes vacant, we actually wrote that into the protocol, Sherry, because we know that that could happen. And so when it does happen, the feather then goes back, is handed over to the Indigenous Community Justice Council, and at which time the feather then gets put on the Eagle staff, and they will care for the feather until at such time another Aboriginal court worker is available to take on the care of the feather.
Looks like you've covered everything because you just can't leave it in a locked cupboard. It needs to come out and visit and take on some of the power. There's a lot of other rules as well surrounding having an eagle feather, from feasting it to don't put other things on it. Any other things you can think about as part of those rules? Terri-Dawn?
Well, I think we covered quite a bit. The biggest rule is use it. That's what it's there for. Mm-hmm. Get the word out so people know that it's in the courts. And like you say, it's not there to be kept in a box. It's there to be used. And so that's something that we're working towards and we're seeing more often, because it truly is a sight to see somebody hold a feather in a courtroom where you thought for many years that we would never be accepted, or our beliefs be accepted, or our culture be accepted. So it truly is an honor.
Yes. Yeah. And it really does send a message to everybody in that courtroom, not just the Indigenous person.
Yes.
Now, I want you to mention what would the effect have been on the entire justice system as a result of this project. Maybe it's hard to measure, but tell us what you think the effect was or has been.
Well, I think it's been a big impact. I think this project has given us respect for our people, for our culture, recognition. By validating the importance of our culture and by introducing feathers into the courtroom, it will make the legal process more inclusive and culturally relevant to Indigenous people. And it's about reconciliation. It's about building those relationships stronger with the courts and with the police and with other community agencies. So, and that was our drive.
And also it opens the system to people. It's not a closed system. Then a Native person walking in there will say, it's okay for me to be here. They have a representation of who I am and what I stand for as well. Yes, very important. And this is something that's happened across the country too, I've discovered, and sometimes with mixed success. But it sure sounds like you wrote the protocols, you consulted the right people, you brought in the elders, you had the feast ready, you made sure everybody was on side. So after you walk out, nobody's going to say, oh, go lock that in the drawer. We're done with it. Yeah, it's very important. And I'm so pleased you've done that work, Terri-Dawn. So look to the future of this project you did and the things that you have done. And what do you see in 5 to 10 years?
More feathers and more courthouses. Building relationships with government agencies and to continue to promote our culture and our belief. My goal is to have eagle feathers available in all the courts in Ontario for Indigenous people. And I think the best way for planning for the future is to make the most of the present. And we need to spread the word and let Indigenous members know that there are eagle feathers available in the courts in Simcoe, Muskoka.
Wow, that's so wise, that line. Can I use that in my next book?
Of course you can.
Okay. I want to take you back to those days when you were a clerk of the court and I was a justice of the peace. And I remember there was one time the judge was either sick, Judge Montgomery, or sent away somewhere else. And I had to adjourn all first appearances on Monday. And you happened to be my clerk that day. Sarah wasn't there for whatever reason. Maybe she was traveling with the judge to another court because she was bilingual. And I remember we had, 72 people on the docket that day to adjourn to another day. So my authority was just to put them off to another day. You were my clerk. You've got your tape recorder and your notes there and everything else. And I remember looking up and there were a whole bunch of Aboriginal people in the room. I recognized some from Christian Island, a couple from Rama, a couple I knew from elsewhere. You got police there, you got Crown Attorney there, you got lawyers. And I kind of looked at you and you looked over at me and we didn't say anything. And I think what was going through our mind was you and I are the only ones in this room who aren't in trouble. Yeah. Because statistically, large number of Native people in the system, right? We're not in handcuffs. This is a great day.
Yes.
Yeah, though it was very interesting times, and we have come a long, long ways. And I'm so glad that you're doing the work you are as well with the OPP. It's good to have an Indigenous person walking through the halls there, yes, and showing other people that we can do anything.
Yes.
Anything else you want to add here, Terri-Dawn, about what's going on or what might be going on next, or that we might not have covered because we're just about out of time?
Well, I have a feather I'd like to gift. I'm just trying to determine who will get the next feather. So it's exciting. I'm looking forward to preparing the next ceremony and doing all the hard work, and looking forward to having another eagle feather in the courts for Indigenous people to use. So that's something to look forward to. It's something that I'll keep you posted on for sure. I'd love for you to be a part of my next ceremony.
All the best to you and the work you're doing. And I'm so glad you're a band member. I can brag about you too. Chimigwech.
Chimigwech.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Do you have something to share? Let everyone know about your next meeting, your need for volunteers, or your fundraising event on the Rogers TV Community Billboard. Send us your words and we'll bring them to life on Rogers TV and rogerstv.com. When it's time to spread the word, go to rogerstv.com to add your announcement to the Community Billboard.
Once depression is recognized,
help can make a difference
for 80% of those who are affected,
allowing them to get back
to their regular activities.
In any given year.
In any given year.
In any given year.
1 in 5